Welcome to Brew with Miss Baritone. I'm your host, Chicky Baritone, and this is my podcast. I'm gonna give it to you all black, no creamer, no sugar, no honey. So join me as I brew up some life-giving conversations with some dope people. Welcome to Brew with Miss Baritone. I am excited about my next guest. His name is Camy Smith, and I like to sum Camy up with three F's. Three F's.
Okay.
Three F's that he's very passionate about, I might add. Faith, family, and finance. Is that pretty accurate?
Absolutely. I was just telling your previous guest, it's all about God, family, and business.
That's right. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm very excited about our interview today.
Me too.
I met you, Camy. We were just discussing, it's been a couple years. And when I met you, it was in the capacity of a financial workshop that was taking place at a church.
That's right.
Your segment during that time, you shared an amazing testimony. And the testimony you shared was when you were a football player.
The fence?
Yes.
Well, the gentleman that invited me to share at that event begged me to talk about that. And he says that I need to tell that story more often.
Yes.
But it was, it was profound when it happened. I guess I ought to tell it more. Did you want me to tell it today?
I do.
That was a setup.
Give me a short version.
Okay. So I'm arriving at Morehouse College here in Atlanta, and season hadn't started yet. I was playing football. And so I wanted to go down to the field to kind of check out, the lay of the land.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been an early Saturday morning that my dad and I went down there. We were going to throw the ball around and just kind of get the vibe, of where I was going to be playing. Anyway, the short version is that upon parking in, the football at the field, the fence, the gate that led from the parking lot to the field was locked. And so I'm sitting here, I'm 18 years old, I'm excited, and then I get there and it's locked and I can't get on the field, And so I was upset, I'm just like kind of, somebody call the guy that unlocks the door, who do we call, right? And so we decided to kind of look around and see if we can get in another way. And so my dad went right, I went left. We're looking for, the old fence holes where you can pull it up and crawl underneath or something like that. Or we're looking for something where we can step up and maybe climb the fence or whatever. We're going to break in there, trespass, whatever we had to do.
Right.
And so about 45 minutes goes by because, we're all around the street now. He's looking, I'm looking, we come back to the front. And so as we're getting ready, I want to say he was heading to the car to go start the car. And, I look like, a 7-year-old that just lost his puppy. I lean up, I go up to the fence one more time just to kind of look at the field.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, as I'm leaning against the fence, it opens. And the entire time, it wasn't actually locked. It just had a chain around it, and the lock looked like it was locked. And so it kind of created this anchor of a thought, which is that you never want to back away just because it looks impossible. And all I had to do was lean on this fence, and it swung wide open. And we looked at each other, he and I, and we didn't even say a word. It was like, wow, that was a God moment.
Yeah.
And so we, of course, got onto the field and threw the ball around. But I think more than anything that day, above and beyond the experience that we had on the field throwing the ball around, was we got back in the car and we remembered that moment.
Yes.
And so I don't know. I think it's a cool story.
It's a great story. And it's a story I will forever remember you by. And that was why I wanted you to share that story. Great. Yeah, and to open up talking about that story, because a lot of the components of that story is a lot of the components that make up you. You have been a risk taker. You have a lot of deep thoughts, and you draw people to you based off of a lot of your principles, which are God principles. And one of the things that I admire that a lot of people don't talk about, but when they talk about it and they're good at the conversation around it and understanding the importance of honoring it and respecting it, is finance. And that has been your arena. So your background, you have a lot of years in finance that include insurance.
Sure. So, I was just telling some friends of mine too, I think that sometimes we want to pursue passions, we want to pursue the things that we enjoy, the things that really matter. But we also live in a money world. We
Yeah.
live in a world that it costs money to do things. I
Yeah.
mean, the production that you're doing here wasn't free, et
That's
cetera.
right.
And so, I grew up, and I think a lot for a lot of us, our childhood and our upbringing kind of determines our approach in our early 20s, right? We
Yeah.
want to run from what we didn't like about our childhood. I was that kid, and I've told this story a million times. I actually like telling this story because it brings me back to my childhood with my mom. But I was that kid when my mom would take me to the grocery store and I'd be sitting in the back seat. She'd turn around and have the pre-grocery store talk.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't ask me for nothing when we get in here because I ain't got it. I'm like, well, what are we doing here then? And then she'd smack me, and then that'd be the rest of that. But I didn't grow up with the best of everything. I grew up and we got by, And so I think for me, in my early 20s, I went to Morehouse College on a football scholarship. I got married at 19 right after my freshman year, and then dropped out of school and decided that I wanted to conquer the world. And so at the age of 22, I bought my first house, and I was on a mission to get financially independent. And nothing mattered. Nothing mattered. I was a little bit of a jerk, then. I'm sure you can't imagine that. But I was a bit of a jerk, and all that mattered to me was getting to that place financially.
Yeah.
And so I spent my entire 20s working 7 days a week. And when I was 27, 28, I'd really started to come into my own and accomplish what some people would consider success. And at the age of 29, I retired. And for the next 4 or 5 years prior to my divorce, I was literally doing what I wanted, when I wanted, et cetera.
Wow.
But I didn't realize at that point in my life that there was so much more to life.
Yeah.
It's like I knew who God was. I'd been born again. I understood family and all these things, but I didn't understand it the way that I do now.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've lived several lives already, because in my 30s were spent, kind of pursuing, the importance of fatherhood. There was a practice that I began implementing probably like in my early 30s. And I started asking men specifically that were 10 years older than me, okay, what was important to them now that wasn't important to them 10 years ago. So that I could align my priorities today and my actions today with what my priorities will be in the future. And then I would ask them, what are the things that are not important to them now that were important to them 10 years ago?
Good question.
And so it helped me align my priorities so that the things that I was doing today would serve me in the man that I was becoming, as opposed to wasting my time on things that aren't going to matter to me then, and wasting my, you get my point. So, anyway, 100% of the time was the reason I tell you the story. 100% of the time, every single person that I've asked that question to has always said that I wish I would have spent more time with my children. So on their pursuit to wealth and riches and whatever you call that, they forsook their kids. And once that time is gone, you can't get it back.
That's right.
And so for my 30s, it has really shaped my dedication and my commitment, my decisions, how I live my life. And from my social media, my son is over there, he's in my hip pocket. And that's a whole nother journey because, there's been custody stuff and all that, whatever. So, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that God is intertwined in everything, because the foundational truths of our Christian beliefs are not void of life.
Absolutely.
There's no component of life that we're living that we can't point it back to the principles of our faith.
Yeah, God has an opinion about everything. He has an opinion and a thought and a perspective about everything that we experience, everything that we feel, everything that we desire, and every aspect of life. And so once you accept that that's your reality, then, the decisions that you make and everything that you're a part of and what you dedicate your time to, I think has to have that alignment together. And, if you want it to be blessed, I think, you got to have that. So, so fatherhood, business, ministry, community, leadership, all of it, is kind of what Being Locked's about. And even my brand is evolving. It started out as just financial freedom, right?
Yeah.
I think you attended one of the workshops here in
4
Atlanta
years ago.
4 years ago. And even that, I still think back and look back at those days and think that so many people still need that stuff. You
Absolutely.
know? And it's just, that's one of my biggest challenges personally, is deciding which lane to dedicate, because there's so many things that I see that need to be fixed.
Yeah.
I was talking about, fatherhood rights within the custody system and things like that. It's totally broken. So I'm considering going back to law school to be a family attorney, so I can, help fathers with rights, things like that.
Yes.
But there's so many areas of this human experience that need someone that cares about people more than they care about money.
Whew.
Right? So at
That's so
the
good.
very core of all industries is the purpose for the industry, but then there's also people that are involved. And, I don't care what industry you put a broken man in, he's broken and he doesn't have, proper alignment. He's going to mess it up.
Yeah. And you've done a good job too in having the necessary conversations, Camy, because it has to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get people to talk and get people to confess,
Sure.
then that is truly a huge part of the beginning of conquering any battle of life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's so funny is you were asking me kind of in preparation for today's conversation, you were a guest on one of my projects.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I don't want to call this a project, this is awesome. But for me, it was a project. I knew
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be something that lasted years and years. But during 2020, with all of the civil unrest that was happening in our country, and you got to understand, for me, it's been my entire life. I'm biracial, right? So my father's from Haiti, my mother's Jewish, and, all the Spanish girls like me. So I didn't know where I fit. You understand?
Yeah.
And so as I was growing up, I struggled to understand where I fit. I wasn't enough of this. I wasn't enough of that.
Yeah.
And then as I grew older, I found that it was a blessing because I could communicate in any room, in any arena, right?
Yeah.
So in 2020, when everything was happening with Breonna Taylor, rest in peace,
Yes.
George Floyd, rest in peace, Ahmaud
Yes.
Arbery, and all of that was kind of, I think Will Smith said, it wasn't that it's new, it's just that it's being recorded.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, we had time on our hands.
Yep.
In 2020, we all, we were sitting at home, eating everything in the refrigerator.
That's right.
Like we were home.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what can I do to make an impact and be a voice in what's going on? And you have an incredible production team. It's just me, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking, what do I do? So I just pressed Facebook Live. Like, what is this? I pressed the red button and I went live. And a friend of mine, a pastor out of South Pennsylvania, he and I were talking about, I think it might have been, I forget the chronological order. It might have been Breonna Taylor. No, it might have been Ahmaud Arbery. I think it was kind of the first in the chronology right there. And we were having this conversation and it lasted about a good hour. And I said, dude, we've got to do this live and let people listen in. And the purpose of it was to bridge, when you scroll through Facebook on any controversial topic, you see both sides, right? Whether it's politics,
Yes.
race, education, you name it, right? You'll see a consistent theme on one side of the argument and a consistent theme on the other side. People saying that the police are within their rights. It wasn't murder, et cetera, right? It wasn't this, it wasn't that. Then you have the other side saying, it was absolutely this, it was absolutely that. And so the goal of those conversations, which started out to be 1 or 2 conversations, turned into 21.
Yeah.
And I had police officers, I had, white folks, black folks on there. I had everybody on there. And of course, you kind of shared even from a corporate side, like, working in corporate America as an engineer, here's what we're experiencing. And so, it was just, how do I allow God's opinion about this subject to be shared? And what's the point in having a voice if you're not going to use it?
Yes.
Right? And so it was bridging the gap, letting people hear the perspectives of folks that they normally would not communicate with. Because people just use, it's like Twitter fingers, right? They just use, they're angry in the comment section, but they're not communicating with somebody that has a different perspective to gain understanding.
Yeah.
And that's what that became. And then after that series ended on the 21st episode, that was when a lot of the sex trafficking stuff started happening in Jeffrey Epstein's case, which, dead or not dead, we don't know. You know, he might be on an island somewhere with Elvis. We don't know where he is.
Right.
You got billions of dollars. You can get out of jail. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyway, but when we found out that all this stuff was happening, or at least it became part of the, national news scene, I started doing some series on that as well.
Yes.
And I connected with several sex trafficking organizations. And honestly, that only lasted 5 series, not because there wasn't more to talk about, but because emotionally it was just too much to bear. So after the 5th one, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna have to let somebody else fight this fight.
Camy, let me tell you, those conversations were everything.
Yeah.
They were everything. And it really takes someone who has a pure heart to pull off hard subject matter and to get people talking, and you had the ability to do that.
Thank you.
And I want to see something else being done with those conversations, because you really touched a nerve in people that I felt they were more comfortable telling you than probably anybody that's closer to them than you.
Right.
And you can feel the authenticity of their stories and their issues, and just emotionally it was a lot. I mean, I had to fight back tears.
Oh, yeah.
On my interview with you, because it was in the dead of the pandemic that
Yeah.
you reached out to me to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And how people not only were expressing their concerns in the comment section, but people were actually encouraging each other.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I've gone back and watched a few of them.
Yes.
And then, of course, I'll go into the comment section and kind of see the engagement. And it's pretty profound what happened, you know?
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that, of course.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the result of, I think, people wanting to have the conversation. And I had some people, especially on the racism conversations, some of my white friends and business partners that were on there, but they were nervous to get on because they didn't want to get, raked over the coals for their opinions. And, all of them, after the conversation was over, thanked me for giving them a safe space where they could communicate and say what they had to say. And so that was a blessing too. But, and then like I said, I had a friend of mine from many, many years ago who's now a cop in Florida, and black guy, and he got on, and people really respected hearing his perspective, because he said, look, I'm both. I'm a cop, I'm black and I'm blue. So let me explain to you how I view this. And so I had some incredible guests on. That was 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Seems like it was just yesterday, but anyway, yeah, it was awesome. So you can go back and watch those episodes for anybody that's listening. Conversations with Camy, it's a hashtag.
Yeah.
On Facebook.
So you're a big advocate of pointing people back to the design of who God has created them to be. I love your approach with that. Being deprogrammed.
Yeah.
Based on the influence of the world.
Yeah. And
one of your videos, it was such an interesting perspective that you gave on Pilates.
What'd I say?
So you made a comment, and you said that, coming from a family where your father's Haitian and your mother is Jewish, and there is a particular type of person that Pilates businesses cater to. All these people look the same.
I said that?
Yeah.
Oh.
And you said that I don't fit that mold. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to take a Pilates class.
Yeah, that's so fun. Well, that was on Instagram Live, I think I said that.
Yes,
maybe once.
It was.
Because on Instagram, I get a little bit more transparent.
Yeah, it was actually like 2020 that you made this video.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 years ago. And from that conversation, I'm going to segue you into this because I want you to share more thought on it, because I thought it was powerful.
Sure.
But the point you was trying to make was that you was never programmed to do Pilates, but being a part of that class and that environment, even though you didn't look like anybody in there,
right,
it allowed you to deprogram your thoughts on doing Pilates, which also is an exercise that people should do more often, and not always putting themselves in environments that are comfortable.
Absolutely. So the Pilates experience, which, by the way, I didn't know we were going to talk about that, but anybody that's watching, I highly recommend it.
I do Pilates, by the
Do you?
way.
Okay.
Yeah, I
What
started
are you
doing
doing?
Pilates about when I got into the pandemic 2
Okay.
years ago. Like, I started doing more of it, and it is no joke.
It's a game changer.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
core, like it's a strengthening core type of situation.
Yeah,
That's no joke.
it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So, as a football player, I understand that our bodies tend to match the type of athletic, sport that we're, it's kind of like swimmers have a certain body type, right?
Yes.
Basketball players, et cetera. So anyway, so during the pandemic, I was one of the victims of that extra COVID weight. Okay, I was sitting at home eating all day, and so I decided I want to get back into better shape. And so I started with my diet. So that's kind of where the isogenics relationship developed.
Yes. Okay.
So I lost a bunch of weight just simply on better nutrition. And then after that, I wanted to, I was now motivated and inspired to get back into working out. And so one day I was going to breakfast and there's Pilates studio. And I thought to myself, how come no one's ever asked me and marketed to me? Because any local business that's growing is sending out marketing material.
Yep.
And I've been obviously on the other side from a business standpoint. And the thought dawned on me, no one's ever marketed Pilates to me. You know how you get Facebook ads for stuff?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's not there by chance.
Oh yeah, we all know that.
Right. There's data that someone decided,
right.
you need to see this ad.
That's
and
right.
the person in the building next to you, right, the house next to you, they didn't get that ad because they have data. They understand that stuff. And so I'm like, why did no one ever market Pilates to me? So I took it upon myself to say, I'm going to go do it anyway. What am I missing out on? And I got in there, and of course I was the only guy in there, right? And so I did it, and I loved it. And I got such great results from it. And again, it was just one of those mental notes that there's just certain things that we don't know because no one told us.
Yep.
There's certain things that we don't know because we weren't exposed to it, but it was beneficial, But it's educating the public on, different stuff. And so for me, I want to be outside the box. I don't want to be put in a box that says this is for you,
right,
and this is not for you. No,
right.
That's for me too if I say it's for me.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And so anyway, that's kind of how that all happened. But now I'm working out 6 days a week, and I feel incredible. If I'd have known it was going to be this good at 40.
6 days.
Yeah.
Y'all got that? 6 days a week.
I love it.
Woo! 6 days is goals.
Yeah. Every morning.
That's
Every
awesome.
morning. So it is cool.
So,
but I was going to say one thing too on
Sure.
that subject, and that is that, as we're talking about, finances and family and health,
yeah.
the original foundational concept of the brand Be Unlocked, right, is
Yes.
all about becoming the best version of yourself, unlocking your full potential, right? Don't just get unlocked, but live unlocked, right?
That's good.
Live
Yeah.
your life in an unlocked, from an unlocked perspective. And a lot of it also goes back to the Matrix. I love that series. I don't know if have you ever seen the Matrix?
Of course,
Okay.
yes.
So we could do a whole seminar on that, right?
Yeah, we really can.
But what has evolved within that concept is that there are certain areas of our lives that we tend to focus, right? And here's what I observed in my insurance career back when I was in the heat of it, right? Is that I knew men, when I was in my mid-20s, that were millionaires. I mean, I'm talking money was not an issue, and they lived amongst the athletes, and I mean, right? So big time incomes and wealth that they created, but their marriages were in shambles. Their kids didn't respect them.
Yeah.
Right? They were making really no major impact in their community. They couldn't get up a flight of stairs because they were so unhealthy.
Wow.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, I am.
And so when you're talking about living a full life, it's really about all of the areas that truly matter, not just the capitalism piece of making money.
Yep.
That's important, don't get me wrong,
Sure.
because money answers all things, we get all that. But how would you call a man successful that has all the money in the world, but his kids don't respect him, and he can't get up a flight of stairs, and his marriage is in shambles, and he's making no impact in his community, and people don't respect, you know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
If that's all that it is, I don't know that I would call that success anymore. And so for me, it was all about identifying which areas of my life mattered And how could I be successful across the board? How could I be unlocked in my community?
Yeah.
How could I be unlocked in my money? How could I be unlocked in my business, in my family, et cetera?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the evolution. And so when you talk about the health side, these are business, endeavors and opportunities that I never would have thought I'd be involved in. There are things that I'm doing now 5 years ago, I never would have thought I'd be involved in.
Wow.
And it's because I looked at them as independent silos, right? But now understanding that they're connected to a broader concept and they're all important. As long as they serve that bigger purpose, then they matter.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
and it goes back to what we were talking about. It's all intertwined.
it is.
And it's difficult to find a way to intertwine them. But in due time, I think when you grow in those separate areas, they come together in a way that's more impactful once you have separated them out sometimes. Sometimes I think intertwining stuff too soon or prematurely without the knowledge base cannot really give the same impact versus you doing them individually.
Sure.
And so that's always been a goal for me with all of these different arenas of gifts, trying to find a way, well, God, how can I use all of these? And yeah, there's a time and a place for all of them, but now I'm at a point to where they all have individually done their thing, and I've been bringing them all together for them to work together.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not
that.
a bad thing.
Are you still doing poetry?
I'm still doing poetry. Poetry was the foundation of it all. That's where it all started. And then it's all kind of branched out from there. And poetry and engineering have been married, and they literally started at the same time. So when I was in college and discovered the gift of poetry, I graduated. And then when I graduated with this engineering degree and with poetry, they have been married. And then everything else has been the offsprings of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Social media is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because it gives us a chance, over time to really get to know people. Yeah. Even though we may have never met or even we don't spend that much time. And I would say that if I had to put a stamp of approval on why the things that you do work is because it's excellent. Like, you do things excellently. You don't do them halfway. And that's why whatever you do, you're gonna you have the business plan, you have the screenplay, like you have it all written out. Yeah, you know what I mean? Kind of like an engineer would do. Yeah. And you apply that to your projects, and they always look so polished and so sharp. It's like clean lines. You know what I mean? Everything is clean lines. Nothing out of place. So I think that's kind of your shtick. That's your that's your brand. It's polished and excellent, and it's step by step.
I try to represent the biggest part of me. Yeah. And that's my faith. And I think doing things in a spirit of excellence, the way God has done with us, is something I'm very adamant about. So I'm grateful to God that it shows through what I do. And I don't feel the pressure. I think our generation's good at this. We don't necessarily feel the pressure of trying to measure up with social media. Right. I am on my own timeline.
Well, our age group, okay, I'm 41, and I know you're 39.
That's right.
Our age group.
Y'all heard that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm now taking over as the interviewer. Have you noticed that? No, please forgive me if I do that.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But I was going to say our age group. I was talking to a buddy of mine. I was saying that I kind of feel like we're the middle child in this time
we are.
Right, that we're in, right? Because we're not quite baby boomers.
That's right.
That are in their 60s, 10,000 a day. We know that stat. And we're also not millennials and Gen Z.
Correct.
Right, that are creating a new world. And this next world isn't ours, it's theirs.
That's true.
The generation before us, they created the world that we're in.
That's true.
And the generation coming after us are creating even the world that we're in, but also the next world. Like, we're not creating the world. We're just trying to find our place in it. Yeah. But we're the middle child for sure. The beauty of that is that we have the ability to connect those two worlds.
That's right. Oh, that's so good,
because they actually need each other.
Yes, that's good.
We're not creating the world. We're the connector of the two worlds. Does that make sense?
Good. That's really, really good.
And that's a struggle because we have the creative bug.
Yep.
So it's like we want to create, that's not your role. That's how I feel, like, from a generational standpoint.
Really? I think we still got some good stuff.
We have creativity, but it's almost like my creativity is in connecting how do I connect this 20-year-old that thinks that they know everything? Mm-hmm. Right?
That's right.
And the 60-year-olds that have a lifetime of experience and perspective, because 20-year-olds don't really respect, yeah, you're antiquated.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, come on, you guys were analog. You know what I'm saying? What could you
Wow,
possibly understand
really,
about my
Camy?
world? No, seriously.
But it's true.
I remember when the internet was created.
Yeah.
Remember when
Yeah.
Bryant Gumbel was teaching what
I
an email
do.
address is?
I do.
What's the @ symbol? We don't know. Right? I have no idea what that is. Email? So it's like a piece of mail, but it's going through like a phone wave or something. We didn't know what it was.
True.
And this generation, my son is, 8 now, and he was programming an iPhone at 2.5 years old.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right? So that's the world he was born into. So how do you bridge those two with the massive shift that our world has gone through?
You keep them around you. That's something that I advocate for as well. I keep both generations around me.
Absolutely.
When I'm creating. And it's represented when people are around me. They see components of that.
Yeah.
Because I realize I need them.
Yeah.
And the things, just like I expressed with one of my guests, I want to avoid some of the experience I had, which some of it is the same. It's a cycling effect, but it looks a little different, but it is the same.
Yeah.
So we do matter in reference to bridging it. You're right. We have components to help bridge it.
Yeah.
But we are needed just as much.
With our ideas and perspectives.
That's right. That's right. So with your Be Unlock, you have different areas of life that you are utilizing your business. But you do have some amazing product.
Yeah, so I've always had this, kind of affinity for creating, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I am creative. I'm corrected. She corrected me. I'm creative.
That's right.
Just, different things. And so I saw this image that about salvation, that Jesus
Yes.
paid it all, and the whole got receipts. And so
Yeah.
I put it on a hoodie, and I used it as a fundraiser. We served
Awesome.
a couple of families over Christmas 2021.
Wonderful.
And I had a few extras, so I brought you one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you all, I'm going to put all the information there so you can support Camy. But this is a
I know how much you
beautiful
love
hoodie.
hoodies, and I know it's
I
going
do.
into spring, but you might get 2 good uses out of it.
Listen, I'm gonna definitely utilize it. But thank you so much
Absolutely.
for being a guest on
Yeah.
the show.
Thank you for
so
having me.
appreciate you being here. But y'all clap it up for
Absolutely.
Mr. Camy Smith.